The mission of Fishhook is to come alongside the local church and to help the local church improve the way it fishes by improving the way it communicates. That's our hope, and that's our passion. And I couldn't be more excited that today we're in a themed room called Splash.
I know. How
because
perfect.
I have never before, as the founder and chief culture officer of Fishhook, ever gotten to lead a workshop actually from an actual dock.
It's very fun.
Yep.
Very fun.
So we've had a great experience here this morning. I'll reflect on a little bit of that in our talk. I want to introduce Jamie Schaefer. Jamie is a key part of our team. She is the learning and development strategist at Fishhook, has been a friend of mine since God first called me to launch this team. And I'm super excited, Jamie, that we're going to present this together.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so as Evan mentioned, I am newer to the Fishhook team. This fall, actually, will have been there 3 years. And prior to that, I served in a large local church for about 17 years. And so I kind of have a sense of like what it's like to live day in and day out in ministry, and served in different areas, but for many years was their communications director. So I'm thrilled to be able to use that knowledge now. In my role, I get to just come alongside a lot of different churches to really help them figure out how to advance their communication strategy, help them with specific projects like websites or branding. We do some very specialized, customized coaching. And then last year, we had the fun of launching Fishhook University, which is training designed for church staff members of all kinds, not just communications directors, but to help church staff members understand from their role how they impact the communications of the church on an everyday basis as they're communicating with their congregation and even their community and beyond. Everyone has a stake in that. And so we'll talk about that a little bit later. But so we have some training to get everyone on the same page, teach them some foundational communication principles, and help them kind of move forward to whatever the next step is for their church. So yes, thrilled to be with you all today. And we're going to have some fun. And this is going to be interactive at times, so which is good because it's early, right? So yeah.
Absolutely. So have you ever been up on the pulpit or the platform and you look around and you realize there is a disaster looming that perhaps the other person up there with you doesn't know about?
Oh.
Jamie, I just want to make sure you're aware there is a hole.
There's a
over
huge
here
hole
about
in the
6
stage.
by 8
so,
inches.
yeah, thank you.
And if you step into that,
Thank you.
it would be
That
awkward.
was great for my guest experience.
Right,
Thank
it
you.
would be awkward for all of us. And in fact, that's one of the things we're going to talk about a little bit later is avoiding awkward moments with your guests. There are still some seats over here and over here, so come on in.
Yeah. Couple
And
up front here.
if one of you that's by the back there, if you would just like motion people forward, I'll stop letting people know there are still a few seats available up here. That'd be great. So as we get started today, I want you to use your imagination a little bit. I want you to imagine and envision that you are entering a place that is very unfamiliar to you, and maybe even a place that you're not completely comfortable with. Maybe it's, a health club because that's not been your thing. Or for me, I travel with a guy a lot for work who rides motorcycles. And whatever little town we're in, if they have a motorcycle dealership, he wants to go in, especially Harley-Davidson dealerships, he wants to go in and see the Harleys, right? I'm not a motorcycle guy. So I'm like just completely uncomfortable. Like I'm afraid I'm going to knock them all down. I'm afraid that, am I allowed to touch them? Maybe for you, it would be envision going to a bar, someplace that you don't just hang out all the time. I want you to think about that experience and the questions you would be asking yourself. And I want to focus on that idea of going into a bar, maybe kind of a rough bar, and going right up to that bar, sitting at the counter. You can order Coke or tea, whatever is your liking, that's fine. But, how do you place your order? Do you pay right away? Do you pay later? Can I eat? There's like a little bowl of some snacks, I think. Can I eat those snacks or not? They charge me for that? Just think about the questions that you might have in that unfamiliar environment. Am I going to stand out? Will they know I'm not really part of this crowd? Well, that's the same experience that many of your guests may have, especially if they are unchurched or have not been in the church for a long time. I want you to think about that place that you might enter that would be uncomfortable, and think about joining your guests in their uncomfort today as they might walk into your place.
Right.
Jane?
Yeah, so today we definitely want to talk about giving you perspective, a different perspective. So I have a story to share as well. So a few weeks ago, my family and I were leaving for a vacation. We were going to Tennessee to get away for a few days. And when you're getting ready for vacation, not only do you have to kind of button up everything at work and get all of that done, but if you have children, or even if you don't, there's just lots to get done. Do I have the laundry? Did I buy a weekend feeder for the fish? Have we programmed the lights accordingly? Did we stop the mail? Making sure everybody has their stuff. And in the midst of this, we decided that for our family dog, that we would have someone come and stay with him for one day before we could get him to the kennel. And that was a family friend, but a family friend who had not been to our home before. And so she was going to stay in our home for 24 hours. And so in the midst of a very long to-do list in the kitchen that I kept crossing things off, I looked around the house and I thought, oh, she's going to come and spend the night here. I want her to have access to the house. And so all of a sudden, I saw my house with very different lenses. And I'm looking around going, oh, look at that dust bunny over there. Oh, that needs to be swept. That needs to be folded. This clearly needs to be bleached. All of a sudden, I saw my house with very different lenses, right? You're getting ready for a guest to come over. All of a sudden, it's like, we need to paint a room. And so I was down on the floor scrubbing things. And of course, quite honestly, she probably wouldn't have cared. But the idea is that today, I want to help you guys put on lenses that you can see your church when you go back home with a very different perspective, that you are getting ready for company, and what does that look like? So one of the things that we talk about is the importance of assessing your guest experience, and that's partially what you're doing here today, right? I'm taking a step forward to figure out what we can improve about our guest experience. And so sometimes people will ask, well, why is this really super important? I mean, can't we just pick a couple of things and try to make those better? Maybe we'll switch from giving out one brand of chocolate in our guest bag to another brand of chocolate. Like, that's better, right? And so we like to talk about, like, what are the benefits of getting this new perspective and assessing your guest experience? So part of that is just to help you be more welcoming and more hospitable. That is beneficial for your guests. But assessing your guest experience is also really beneficial for your staff team, for your volunteer team, and we'll walk through a few ideas why. First of all, as we think about as believers, ideally we're all on a journey, a faith journey where there's constant growth, we're changing, we're growing. Ideally there's things that we are learning as parents or grandparents as we grow, as husbands and wives. And for our churches as well, we don't want your church to just stay stuck. And so it's great to assess. It's very healthy to be identifying some things about, oh, I think we could make some improvements in this area. Sometimes we feel like, oh, gosh, can't something in the world stay the same? Could it be our guest experience? And so we want to encourage you to push forward a little bit and stretch your team. One, because it's healthy. Two, it's a great coaching tool. And so for your team, this is a great time. Sometimes if you're running hard and fast in ministry, you may not get a lot of pats on the back. And maybe your team doesn't either. So this is a great time to look at your church and say, hey, as we're assessing this, here are some things that are actually going really well. And so we're gonna give some attaboys and attagirls for the people who are making that happen. And then also, again, we can identify those areas of growth and say, hey, team, let's hone in and focus on this so that we can continue to grow in this area. And then your team has the fun of seeing you set a goal and achieve it, which, again, sometimes in ministry, it's tempting that we like to talk about things, and somehow it just doesn't get done. We walk out of a meeting, and 3 weeks later, we say, who was supposed to do that again? Oh, that was me. Right. So the other part is that, again, it brings clarity and focus. So as you go back home and you're assessing your guest experience, you may find a number of things that you would be tempted to change or work on. And we would encourage you to pick, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? So for your team, you're going to help them hone in on this one thing. Hey, we are going to work on the gift that we give to visitors. We're going to work on the process that we get them connected to that newcomer class. Or if they're coming for a newcomer coffee, we're going to work on making that better. And then we're going to move on to the next thing. So ideally, you help your team phone in. Don't get paralyzed by all the things we could change. In the next 3 months, let's just work on this, and then we'll do something else. And then at the end of a year or two, you can look back and go, whew, we have really accomplished some things and made this better for our guests. And then finally, it just gives your team permission to share new ideas. We were joking earlier and talking about ideas that if there was a Paris, Indiana, what would we like to see there? And we agreed on Eiffel Tower and some different things. And so I was joking with, hey, no bad ideas. I hope that you're encouraging a team where creativity is okay. It's okay to dream crazy. And as we've learned with our own team, there are some of our team members who love dreaming more than others. Some really want us to kind of bring them the dream, and they'll tell us the 10 steps it takes to accomplish that. So know within your volunteers and your staff team, like, who are those people that we need to gather over lunch and just talk about, okay, the sky's the limit. What could we do here to make this a more welcoming environment for our guests? So
it's really important, as Jamie talks about, the fact that we have the idea of picking just one thing and focusing on that one thing. One of the things that Fishhook gets to do that we love are secret guest experiences or secret worship experiences, where we come to a church location. You know, a key leader or two knows we're coming, but the guest team doesn't know we're coming, the ushers and greeters don't know, the coffee people, the nursery check-in people, and we want to come and see what's the experience in that church and then report back. And so when you think about changing one little thing, I just want to tell you a couple stories real quick about that kind of experience. Walking into the Vineyard Church in Urbana, Illinois. A fairly large church, kind of a busy morning, a lot of people coming in. I can totally get lost in the crowd as I walk in. And I had with me at the time my son who was in middle school. And so he was going to do the experience with me, and he was going to go to their middle school program. And he gets $25 and a Jimmy John's afterwards. And
nice. Yes, great.
If he fills out the report paper completely. So we come walking in. And literally, so as a first-time guest, I walk in, what's the first thing I have to do? Look for a sign. I don't know where to go. People who go to your church every week, they know exactly, middle school's this way. They know that. I don't know that. So my son and I walk in, and what's the first thing we do? That. I literally, 2 seconds on that, and a greeter was up with me. Are you new? Welcome. They had trained that if someone is looking side to side, looking around for a sign, that means they're new. Now, they didn't smother me, they didn't tackle me, but they made it apparent that they had picked up on that clue. And that was really the first time that I had figured out that that was a clue, because I had demonstrated this and they picked up on it. That's not something to change. That's something to celebrate and reinforce. Right. Something to change is in that same church that morning, and this is a large auditorium, probably 1,500 people, probably about half full. At the beginning of the welcome and announcements, from the platform, the person doing the welcome says, we want to welcome all our guests and visitors this morning. That's super good. If you're new with us, we want you to raise your hand. Okay, I'm an extrovert off the chart. And when I do these, I sit about 3/4 of the way back. I kind of want to be able to envision what's going on. Raise your hand. We have a gift for you, and our ushers are going to bring it up the aisle. Okay, so here I am. I'm like, raise my hand, kind of awkward. They don't see me yet. I'm going to put it back down. I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait till they see me, till they're looking. No, they're not looking yet. They're not. So I have this whole dialogue going on in my head about being nervous and self-conscious about raising my hand. Finally, they look. They spot me. I get my hand up. I sheepishly bring it back down. I get my gift. I don't want to be noticed, right? And I don't think your guests necessarily want to be noticed either. And so now now I got this crinkly bag, and I got this coffee cup. I hope I don't set it down and make a noise. I hope I don't kick it over. Okay. They told me a whole bunch of other stuff. The guy on the platform did not stop talking, but I stopped listening. What they were telling me is immediately after the service, we invite you to the lobby, go outside and turn left, look for the sign, and one of our pastors is going to be there. We have special coffee and bagels for our guests, and we would love for you to come meet with us. Well, when we talked with them later, they couldn't figure out why nobody was coming to the bagel thing. And I said, well, when did you even talk about the bagel thing? Oh, right after we were bringing out the gifts. We just had two small changes. One, don't call your guests out by raising their hand. And two, if you were still going to do that, don't say anything important while you're doing that. By that small change, they were able to significantly increase the number of people who were coming to have a meaningful conversation. So, as we talk today, don't be overwhelmed. Just think about the one or two, as Jamie said, what are the one or two things you want to pick up on? All right, Jamie?
So as we look at assessing the guest experience, one of the things that we have to think about is, well, we should probably start from the beginning, right? So where is the beginning of the guest experience? And just raise your hand. Parking lot, okay, definitely. That's oh, online. Ding, ding, ding. Yeah.
What's your
So-
name? What's your name?
Oh, I know.
Yeah,
Could you
see?
stand up? We're going to bring you a free gift. No.
Yeah, but you're a member. See? Good call.
Good call. Thank you. Yes, it is. It is. Today, most, if not all of your guests are going to check you out online prior to coming to visit your church. And so we're going to talk through what we would call welcome mats. So your welcome mats are the initial interactions that your guests are having with your church. And ideally, today we're just going to focus on 3 of those. And so if you think about kind of a checklist as you go back and you're thinking through, kind of rate yourself on how you're doing on these things. So the first one would be that online experience. So when they visit you, if you, how many of you are doing social media, any form? Okay. Probably 75%. Okay, so when they visit your social media, if it's Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, your first kind of item on the checklist is, are they going to see regular posts? Is the last post, please come to Christmas Eve? Hopefully not, but no shame if it is. You're going to change that. That'll be one of the things you phase in. That there are consistent posts. And sometimes that's half the battle, is just finding someone in your church who's excited and keeps that moving. The second part of the social media experience is as you're looking through if it's Facebook, as you're looking through your Facebook feed there, are you listing just kind of, hey, come to this event, or we're telling you about this new sermon series, and there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, we would encourage you to do those things. But make sure that there is also some storytelling that's happening there. That if someone visits you, they're getting a sense of like, what is it like to be a part of your church community? What are the things that your members enjoy doing? What are the things that you're doing to help the community or the world? Are there specific videos or blog posts about stories of life change within your congregation? That is really so much more engaging than just those date and time sort of things. So make sure there's something there. And then on your website, visitors love to see a new area, and whatever you want to call that, some, new to our church, just new with a question mark, whatever. And that's kind of a visitor's hub. And in that visitors hub, we don't want to overwhelm them. There shouldn't be 12 PDF downloads and all that. But we want to give them some really concise paragraphs about what time they come to visit, certainly, how do they check their kids in, and even more so, what is the vibe of your church? Even what to wear. Like even when we do secret worship, we will sometimes look to see what's appropriate to wear at this church. So even something like that, just a few of those details. Where do they park? How do they get there? So that you've given them a really quick snapshot without having to sort through your entire website. So online experience. Then arrival and parking. So, and I know this is, when I came this morning, I've not been to this church before, and so I was coming through all these back country roads. There was lightning flashing all around. And I'm thinking, I hope I'm going the right way. So I was so relieved when I saw the church sign. It's like, oh, I came to the right place. Now here, we have a pretty populated area. But if you are in a setting where it's maybe more of a rural setting, I would say as people are nearing your church, is there any sign anywhere that they are near your church? I mean, before they get there, long before they get there. Hey, this church this way. Sometimes we're driving out to those rural settings and you do feel like, did I take a wrong turn here? So the other thing is let's be good neighbors. If you are in more of a neighborhood setting, sometimes we know we're near a church because the traffic is congested on the street right before Sunday morning service. It's like, oh, yep, it's here somewhere. And the neighbors are like, well, I'm not making my Starbucks run now. The church is in service. So making sure that you're being a good neighbor, and that if you do get a little traffic buildup on the street, that maybe you have some parking lot hosts, you have some people who are directing traffic to kind of keep that moving. We always say, being part of a moving crowd is very exciting. Being stuck in traffic is not. So we want to try to avoid that. And then as far as information, sometimes, I mentioned I worked in a church for a long time, and I think sometimes we think of Sunday morning as the office is closed, and yet our guests often think of, hey, this is your primary open for business day. And so when people are deciding to come to church, we all know if you've met newcomers, sometimes it's, we're just shopping for a new church, and other times they are really in a place of brokenness, and it's like, church is my last-ditch effort. I'm just going to give this a try. I've been through something very difficult in my life, or I'm going to come with a friend. And so we want to make sure that if they are sending you an email or something on social media on a Saturday, that there is someone who is in tune with that, who is watching for those posts and able to respond to them. Or if they're calling you on a Sunday morning just to clarify, I have a child with special needs. Do you have something for this child? If they have last-minute questions, is there someone picking up the phone to take care of that so you don't miss an opportunity there? And then finally, the main entrance. How many of you are in a building that is less than 5 years old? Okay. Oh, look at you. That's nice, isn't it? It is nice. Okay. Let's go 20 years old or older for your facility. Okay, some. Okay. So if your building is a little bit older.
Can we even go farther?
Yeah.
How about 50 years or older?
50 years or older. Oh, wow. Okay. Anybody? Shout it out. What's the top one? Oldest building. 154. Okay.
154?
Okay. Yeah.
Wow.
That's amazing. I think you went. Oh, we're having people raise their hands again.
Right.
We didn't ask for your name or anything, though. So probably 150 years ago, they may not have had the vision for where eventually this church would go. And so sometimes you have kind of that, we had this at my home church. You have that core building that was built in 1972, and then we decided we were going to have a campaign to add an education wing and a children's center and a gym and expand the worship center. And you start snapping on all these Legos of your building, and which is great. We love that growth. And yet, if you look at a map of your building for a newcomer, they may be like, what's happening here? Who made this? So first of all, a lot of churches we visit, there's kind of an architectural indicated main entrance, like, you can picture like with like this. And then we find people don't go in that door. No, everybody parks back by the children's center, and we go in that one. Or I went to one church where it was full of a lot of senior adults, and so for them, it was easier to go in the ramp entrance. So as I was entering their church, I'm like, nobody's going in the front door. Did I get the service time right? So making sure that you have signed your entrances really well is very helpful. And people can kind of follow the crowd to go, I think everybody's heading this way. But it's really nice to assure your guests, nope, you're heading in the right direction. The other thing would be, do you have any awkward entrances? And sometimes this is, you're thinking about your guests. They have underestimated how long it would take to either get to the church or get the kids dressed or whatever, spiritual warfare, and they almost didn't come or something. And then they get there, they're running late, and they walk in an entrance, and oops, they're in the front of the sanctuary, and you've already started. That's embarrassing. But we do see that. So if you have entrances like that, making sure that you are signing clearly, you could do very inexpensive signage on your glass or on the door there, just to help them know, hey, this is the place to go in, this is not the place to go in. And then finally, and we're definitely going to talk about this more, but just making sure at those entrances that you have really friendly greeters who, as Evan mentioned, they are extroverts off the scale, they love people, and they are all about welcoming people in and getting them where they need to go. Definitely a great part of that welcome spot. So we have a couple other areas to focus on.
Yeah, absolutely. There are actually 5 areas that we want to walk you through. For a newcomer, attending your church may also feel like attending someone else's family reunion or class reunion. Both the things I'm not crazy about, even when it's my own family and my own school. But it's even more awkward when it's someone else's. And so we're going to walk through 5 areas, and these areas are these are the areas that we get feedback on from guests, either positively or negatively. These 5 key areas. So. Let's look at this. And Jamie, why don't you get us started?
Yeah, so first of all, we'll talk about campus navigation. Okay, so we got them into the parking lot. We got them through the main entrance. And then we have to get them ideally to the worship space, to the children's area, to the restrooms. And so really making sure that you have helped them. So if they're the type of person who will reach out and ask a question, that's great. They can find it. But sometimes people do kind of want to fly under the radar a little bit. So make sure that you've helped them with signage. So this is your homework when you go back home. This is a little game you can play with your team. So go to your main entrance, and maybe do this during the week when it's not crowded. Go to your main entrance, and so you are on a treasure hunt for the restrooms, your worship space, your main worship space that they would be heading to, your children's area, and the place where they would get more information, or maybe you have kind of a coffee area or something like that. So kind of pick those 4 main areas that you're on a treasure hunt for. And take with your team and you walk your building and see how far you can make it based on signage alone. If there was no one there to help you, would you be able to make it to those places easily? Now, the other trick about doing this during the week is there are often not people in the building. So the other thing I would ask you to consider is, if you have a big lobby space, when this lobby space is filled with bodies, if there is signage, would any of it be obscured by people standing there? So if so, and so what I would encourage you to do is, you may see like, oh, we really could use a sign right here. If so, take your phone, take some pictures as you're kind of going through your building to help you kind of notice, okay, this is where I need to come back to and work out a sign here. The other thing is you may notice as we talk about putting on our lenses with guest experience, you may walk through and go, oh, look at that baseboard right there. I guess I should probably get a picture of that too. Or there's some peeling paint here or something. So go ahead and feel free to note any of those facility things that you'd like to at least get on a list. Again, it may not be phase 1. Maybe it's phase 3.
Now, let me also add,
yeah.
as you think about those key areas that Jamie's pointed out, make sure you're calling those things that the people who are not part of your church will understand.
Yes.
If you call your children's area Celebration Station, your guests don't know that that's what you call your kids' area. So it's okay to call it Celebration Station when they get there, but call it what it is, call it kids for all the interior signage. And just think about how an airport works. An airport is always clear. No matter what airport you go to, it's always baggage claim, it's always ground transportation, it's always arrivals and departures. So give people familiar handles that they can grab onto. Nobody knows what goes on in the Galleria, but I'm sure it's awesome.
Yeah.
Yep.
I love, even Evan and I were kind of walking the halls out here a little bit. We loved, as we mentioned, the splash theme area. But as you walk down these halls here, the classrooms, it doesn't say like the droplets and the waves and the whatever. It just very clearly says 3-year-olds or 2-year-olds or something. And so we really appreciated that.
And the signs are about 6 feet high, so that if that hallway is crowded, I can see them, and they're perpendicular to the wall. I don't have to be looking at the wall to see the sign. I can see all those signs looking down the hallway. So this is a great example as you exit the room. Just look down these halls.
Yeah. And then you want to walk us through atmosphere and vibe?
Sure, I love atmosphere and vibe.
You like talking about culture. This is kind of a culture thing. Yeah.
So atmosphere and vibe is super important. It's really creating a focus on having a church that is welcoming, clean, and a friendly environment. And there's a few ways that you can look at your environment. First off, friendly people. Well, when we do our work with churches and we ask them to describe their church, every one of them says we're friendly. But there's a difference between friendly and welcoming. Friendly is short, welcoming is intentional. Friendly is a high, welcoming is deeper. But you do want, at least, at a minimum, friendly people. And we can't stress how important that is. You want to have people who are ready to be available to answer questions, and provide a face to your building. Churches often think about having a greeter, but it's really important also to have someone who's ready to say thanks at the end of the experience. So consider having your greeters back on the doors. I know this is a big volunteer, like that right there. Like I've just said, oh my word, we have more people to schedule.
Yeah.
But this is a really important moment to make a last final impression, positive impression, and answer any questions they have.
Yeah.
In a few moments, we're also going to talk about all of your volunteers that are on the front line. But for now, I have a little short activity for you. On your table is...
Actually, I'm going to get it for you. Yeah.
We're going to hand them out. We'll hand them out at the front of the table, and we'll have you pass them down. It's a little guest goals worksheet. So we're going to go into an activity time
Yeah.
as we think about your guest goals.
I don't know how many. I think that should be enough for the table, but...
There are 2 sides. I want you to look at the side that has the big headline on
Should
it,
I say
Guest Goals Worksheet, and don't turn it over and look at the other side.
Yeah. Only the first panel right under where
Don't
it says
look at the back side.
Guest Goals
Look-
Worksheet.
It's
And
folded
don't
in
fold it
half.
open. It's
Yep.
folded in half. Yeah, intentionally.
Oh, yep.
Yeah, so leave
We need
it.
some. Jamie?
So as you're looking, just
Need
leave,
some over in the corner and in
leave
the
it
back.
folded just like this. We're just going to look at one side
kinda-
at a time.
It's a little bit like an altar call. And yes, you in the back, and you over
Some
here.
extras over here. You guys, does everybody here have one?
A few more over there. A few more over there.
Okay. There you go. Yeah. Thank you. You are so welcome. There you go. Everybody, extras.
All right, don't open it up. Look only at the side that says guest goals
You're
worksheet.
good.
So thinking about when someone visits your home, you want to make a certain experience for a guest. We would very rarely not think about wanting to make the best experience for our guest in our home. Again, as Jamie said, you might clean your home, you might prepare food, you might light candles, or even talk about making people feel at home. Hospitality is really key and a key part of the Christian life. When newcomers visit your church, what do you hope they will say or think or feel, and how can you make them feel at home? So, we've given you just a few short questions there on the front. Describe what you want for those who visit your church and or your specific ministry area. So just jot down a few words, and this will just be for you. We won't have you share this, I don't think. Well, maybe we might call out somebody to make you feel
if they
awkward.
want to share.
Yeah.
We might invite you to just stand up here and read it.
Right.
No,
So
we
we'll
won't
give
do
you a
that.
moment to complete the I hope questions.
Oh.
All right. I hear some chatting going on, so I'll
Yes.
figure several of you are done. Let me invite you now to open up the paper so you have the whole thing. You're seeing both sides. You've identified what you hope people will feel. The things that we hope will happen need to be backed up by processes, teams, people to make those things happen. The things we hope will happen will not happen by accident. They'll only happen because we're intentional. And so, think about each of these items. How have you addressed these goals? If these are goals on the left side, write down if you currently have the processes, people, teams in place to make those things happen. So, I hope our guests think we're welcoming. Write down over here, what do you currently have in place to make that happen? And if you don't, maybe just put a little star. This is an area to work on. Let me just give you a moment to think about those.
Yeah. Just seeing if you're all awake. I would just also mention, as some of you are finishing up, this is a fun activity too to do with your team, maybe at a staff meeting or something as you're focusing on guest experience, and see on that left-hand side there, do you as a team agree on what you hope your guests think, feel, experience, do? Okay.
Anybody have anything you want to share? Your left-hand statement and your right-hand statement that supports it, whether it's, hey, we got this in place, or we need to shore this up. Anything, because we love to be able to learn from one another. Anybody?
I think one of the key things about a guest coming in is that makes or breaks it is whether they know anybody here. And I don't know if it'd be appropriate to ask, is there anyone here that you already know? And then you'll find them. Because if they know somebody, it makes all the difference in the world, I think.
We actually talk about that. That is, as you are engaging with a first-time guest, that is a really great question to ask. Is there someone here that you're visiting, or I think you had a couple of examples there of kind of how to start those conversations.
Yeah, I never want to feel presumptuous that, like, well, of course you know we're here. We've been here for 154 years. So often, I play this role in my own church in terms of first-time guest experience, and I'll just ask, how do you find us? How do you, And so then right away you find, well, we've been looking for a church, clue.
Yeah.
Well, I found you on the website. I've been driving by and just thinking about, you start to find out things. I think asking, is there anybody else here that you know? That's a great question. Let me ask, how about the I hope they didn't notice? I'll confess mine first. If you came to our office, we're on the north side of Indy, right near 465 and Meridian, in a little working class neighborhood called Home Place, and we're in an old farmhouse. If you came to my office, I hope you don't notice the backside of the fence. From the street, which faces, this fence faces west, so it gets a bunch of afternoon sun. But it's under a tree, and so the backside is all covered with like dirt and stuff that falls off the tree, plus moss. Like not all out moss, but like green. It's been cruddy for several years. And I can actually see it from my office. And day after day, I look out at that, I'm like, I should have somebody power wash that, or I bet if I just grabbed a soap and water and bucket. But I just didn't do it. And then finally, Lindsay, our director of operations, she noticed it as well. And she sent me an email, hey, by the way, I took care of that fence. She said it took 10 minutes and a little elbow grease. So for me, I'm like super embarrassed. Why did I not do that little thing?
Right.
Anything for you that in your church you hope they don't notice? All the chairs against the wall.
Like stacked up, or
Yep.
Yeah.
Anybody else? It's okay. Confession's good for the soul. We're with friends.
We're
I'm pretty
growing
sure.
together. It's a safe place.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
Here's what I'll share with you. The thing you hope they don't notice, they notice.
Yeah.
They see it. They see it. So we would encourage you to take on that. And so that let me kind of take us on. A next area relative to your environment or your vibe or your atmosphere is a well-kept building. A well-kept building, keep things clutter-free. The storage area that's like bulging out into the hallway, get rid of that. I would say also think about the atmosphere in terms of color. Color says a lot to us. And think about the retail environments, the restaurants that you go to, the retail stores. They put a lot of emphasis on color. Panera has a feel in part because of the color. If you're a church that's striving to attract young families, if your church looks like it's trying to attract 70-year-old women because of the way it's decorated,
Right.
you have a problem. And there's nothing wrong with attracting 70-year-old women to your church. But if strategically you've really put a stake in the ground, we're going to beef up our children's area, then really think, how does your whole church reflect an atmosphere that would be engaging and exciting for young families? And I always say, in terms of decorating, paint is cheap. Paint is really affordable. So keep your traffic areas clean, and we're going to talk about smells in a little bit. So I won't talk about that diaper smell that comes from the preschool
nursery.
wing, but we'll get there in a little bit. Jamie?
Which leads us nicely into the children's area. One of the other things we want to talk about is your guest experience, like Evan said, especially if you're trying to attract young families, is that is a prime spot for creating a great guest experience for families. So you want to keep things efficient and moving. You want to make sure that it's clear how you get to check in, get the kids to classes, and get the parents to worship on time. So making sure that all of that is clear. Also making sure, that's one of our earlier slides, if you were here really early, we had kind of some funny, awkward ways to say welcome, and one of them was, sure, hand your kid to a stranger, it's fine. So we know that time, it can be a little stressful for parents, a little stressful for kids, and so we want volunteers who are trained to really help that kid come in, get down on their eye level, talk to them, greet them by name, welcome them into the classroom, and assure the parent we are going to incorporate them well into the flow of things. Obviously, we want to have a chance for the parents to tell us if there are any allergies or any situations we need to know about. And then we want a way to get a hold of that parent if we need to during the service. So if you're in a smaller church, it might be just fine for a volunteer to walk in to the sanctuary and spot the parent. If you're in a larger church, we really want to have a way to get a hold of that parent. Certainly keeping them safe and secure as well. As you think about the volunteers that are in your classrooms, making sure that you have background checks on all your volunteers. I'm sure many of you are already doing this, that you have multiple adults in the classroom. So even if you have junior high students volunteering or whatever, that we have multiple adults in the classroom, and procedures that prevent unauthorized people from picking up the children, even if you're in a small church. I mean, unfortunately, in today's world, that's just a reality. We have custody situations and all sorts of things where someone might try to pick up a child. In addition to having that process in place, making sure that your volunteers are trained and understand the importance of following it. As Evan mentioned, sometimes when we do secret worship, we take our own children along, and I have had the experience many times of dropping off one of my children and going to pick them up, and many times I could have walked into that classroom, big church, small church, walked into that classroom and taken them without anybody noticing, because at the end, it's crazy. Everyone is running around with glitter on them, and there's crafts, and it's crazy. And the volunteers are like, woo, we made it through, and we're going to go on to our next thing. And so sometimes they get a little lax toward the end there. So we want to really encourage our volunteers to stay vigilant until that child is safely back in the hands of their parent. So tell us about worship service.
All right, let's talk about worship service. So this is a big part of this of the experience. Just so you know, our experience shows that people have probably already decided whether they're coming back or not before your worship service starts. But your worship service is really important because they may have decided at this point they want to come back. So we want to keep giving them the feeling and the experience that they want to keep coming back. So just a couple things to focus on. First, there are a lot of questions, again, going through the minds of people who are visiting your church, especially if they don't have a lot of church background. For me, I didn't come to a relationship with Jesus until my late 20s. I can remember being totally confused. Why in the world are we waving palm branches? I have no idea what this is about. Big, big words. Redemption, sanctification, like these were just super, super confusing. But even before you get to those big topics, there are just some things that happen in your service that would be helpful to explain. A sentence or two of explanation around communion. A sentence or two of explanation around why do we celebrate with an offering. A sentence or two around, we worked with one church, it was a Quaker church, and they have a time when their church just went silent. But there was no explanation of that. And so the person on our team who was doing that, was that you?
It was me. Yeah. Kind of wondering, like, what's happening now? Like,
Yeah. And you have a pretty strong church background.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So just important, think about your own worship expressions, and is there anything for churched people to explain, but especially for unchurched. And then the other is just, as you think about people coming into worship, it's nice to have, it's a great time, unless you're just a service where there's like no talking. I'm going to guess many of you have a lot of conversation, a lot of people connecting with one another. Think about section hosts. Of course, hopefully pastors, ministers, and other leaders are, making themselves available during that time. But this is a great way for lay leaders to kind of own part of the sanctuary, because people typically tend to sit in the same place week after week. And you can actually develop community with what we would just call a section host. And that's also a way that they can recognize, oh, somebody's new in my area, and I can make a connection with them. I think that's it. Let's talk about next steps, can we?
Yeah. So next steps, we talk about, again, we want to define your next steps with intention. So what is it that you would like a guest to do? What's the best thing for them to do to get connected to the church, to take the next step in their faith journey? So we want to make sure to actually share that next step at some point during the service and just make that really clear. Where do I go after the service as a guest? And if you say you're going to meet me in a certain area or there's a coffee fellowship area, having people hang around for a little bit, because as someone is new, they may have to pick up children from a couple of different classrooms. They may just be kind of exploring your building, so make sure you don't kind of check out there, because I know everyone's excited they're going to go to Bob Evans or whatever, but make sure those volunteers hang out a little bit to engage with that guest, and just in case they have questions. Another part is just testing. Again, we can have procedures or logistics, but we have to know that they actually work, right? So I would encourage you, if your church allows, like if it's really small, this may not work, but if it's a little bit larger, test your system, like fill out the guest card and use your Gmail account or something and see, like, do you get the appropriate follow-up email or letter or what happens? I've seen in several churches where we will get, I had one church that they thanked me for a visit 3 weeks after I visited. One church thanked me for my second visit, and I had never been back for a second. So they're just different things, like just making sure that the people behind the scenes know what they're supposed to be doing. And then, of course, we don't want to put them on our mailing lists for the rest of their lives. So have some sort of procedure that we kind of know, like, did this person get involved or not? Or can we kind of go ahead and rotate them off?
Excellent. Let's take a look at some areas where you can start focusing on. We've talked about some areas to evaluate and improve. Now we want to talk about what we would call the guest repellents.
The guest repellent.
Okay, guest
yes.
repellents. There are 4 guest repellents. They are unfriendly, uncomfortable, unsafe, and unclean.
It sounds really unpleasant.
It does sound unpleasant, but I'm going to do my best job of these.
Yeah,
All
we
right.
have to go there.
So let's fly through these a little bit here. We want to kick off with unfriendly. We want to start with this one because it's an easy one. We've all had the interaction, the experience of interacting with someone who is unfriendly, and it never makes a good experience. So here are some of the things that we hear church guests tell us over and over about what unfriendly looks like. I would say surly or overzealous greeters. It's possible to be too friendly. People who are either not friendly or overly friendly in almost a desperate way. Those people who are very tuned to new people, but we don't want it to feel like it's desperate that you're here.
Yes.
Poor building signage is a repellent. We've talked about that. We mentioned this newcomer call out. Again, my apologies for breaking that rule. Yep,
Yeah.
we're still friends? Good. Newcomer call out. It's just, your extroverts are probably okay with it. Your introverts are just absolutely like melting inside.
Yes.
And I'm an extrovert. It's very difficult for us to understand that. So we think it's a good thing. Well, who wouldn't want to be noticed?
Yeah.
Look, I'm here. Come
Yeah.
talk to me.
Tell your story.
Lindsay on our team has really helped me understand what happens in the soul of an introvert when that happens. So we don't want to do that. And here's why we don't want to do it. Like, it's easy just to kind of, it's easy to laugh at. It also can become a spiritual barrier. Like, if that repels the person from coming back, from being open during the rest of the service, this is important. I would say too soon comments. So inviting a newcomer into a volunteer role or membership on their first visit. We often like to say, just date your visitors.
Yeah.
Date your guests.
Yeah. I had a church once where on a first visit, they invited me back for choir practice that night. Now, it was possible, like, he was sitting near me and thought I had a great voice, but I don't think so. I think they just really wanted more people in the choir. And
Right.
No, too soon.
Insider language. If you have a narthex, you actually have a lobby. I thought they said anthrax the first time. Again, acronyms. If you refer to your church as FWC because you're First Wesleyan Church, call it First Wesleyan Church. It won't take you that much longer to say the whole name. Bad logistics or follow-up, strange phone calls or poor data. I would say if anyone is still showing up on your guests' doorsteps as a follow-up, unless you're bringing them a new car, I would give them the gift at the church. And then inappropriate comments. Hey, are you single? So's Harold. Have you two met?
Don't go there. Don't go there. Yeah.
I would like to say we haven't seen most of these things happen.
But we have.
The next one is uncomfortable. Remember, we have a saying, it's always someone's first Sunday. It's always someone's first Sunday. So during your worship service, look for ways to be attentive to newcomers in the crowd and, again, explain your practices in your worship setting, when to sit, when to stand, when to pray, et
Is
cetera.
this a song that everyone joins in on, or is this kind of just the people up front? Or,
Right.
Yeah.
Help us
yeah.
know. Unsafe. Again, this is a huge one. I would say this is what unsafe looks like to me as a 53-year-old is probably different than what looks unsafe to a 70 or 80-year-old, and it's very different from what looks unsafe to a 27-year-old mom. And so just think about these dangerous traffic situations in your parking lots, weather-related issues. You know, are your sidewalks cleared in the winter? Inappropriate lighting or signage in your building, especially near stairwells. Americans with Disabilities Act, if you have an older church, we know that that's a real struggle, but think about how are people getting around in our facility. Lack of procedures or personnel with children's check-in. Locating children's classes near any unsecured door. I mean, if you're not familiar with what this looks like, go to Chuck E. Cheese. I'm sorry that you'd have to go to Chuck E. Cheese for the experience, for the food.
It may be one of those places you feel uncomfortable, or yeah.
Right.
It's
I
foreign,
am,
yes.
for sure. And then failing to plan for emergencies. Nothing will make people feel uncomfortable more than being in an emergency situation and realizing that there was no plan. So do you have a plan for health-related issues? Do you have a plan for other, more significant, a building intruder? Like, just think through these things. They're horrible to think through, but lots of information available online for these things. All right, unclean. I love this. If there was a scratch and sniff sticker made to represent your church, what would it smell like?
Okay, so just to drive home the point that your guests experience your church with all of their senses, I need 4 volunteers, and I will not embarrass you in any way, but we have a little game here. So come right up front.
We have, right over here. He raised his hand this time.
Okay.
Over here. Someone else?
This
Tom?
is called...
A lady? Ladies? Someone?
We need
All right, there we go.
This is called the sniff test, okay? So I have hidden a smell.
Just line yourself up across the front here. That's great.
Yes, yes. I have hidden a smell in each of these little containers, and I'm going to have you close your eyes and guess what it is, okay? So you can experience this workshop with all your senses. So close your eyes. Okay, smell.
Can't smell. Hey, Alex.
Okay, we need a backup. Can we get a backup? He's got stuffy nose. Okay, right here. He kind of made a face like, what do you think? Try again?
Lotion.
Okay. It's an air freshener. It's a Lysol air freshener. So kind of that institutional smell. Lots of us have those institutional smells
Number 2?
in our church. Okay.
We take number 1?
Yes, thank you. Okay, so number 2, close your eyes.
7-year-old lady.
No.
It smells like a. No, sorry. Yeah, now you're gonna be afraid to tell everybody what it smells like.
It's fine.
It's.
You try again. Or not. He's afraid.
It smells like a stale cinnamon.
Okay, thank you. Yes, it's a kind of an old, it is, yes, a spice, an old spice smell. Okay, yeah, spicy. Okay.
Number 3?
Number 3. Okay, next up, contestant. Smell again.
I know what it is, but I can't recognize it.
Okay.
I know I've smelled it before, though.
Oh, I'm sure you have.
Yeah.
Okay, someone, right here. Coffee. Yeah, typically. We got the one person in the room who doesn't like coffee. Okay.
Number 4?
Okay, and then number 4. Okay, close your eyes. She's crinkling.
I'm trying to figure out what it smells like. Kind of a vinegary.
Yeah. Is it pleasant?
Not terribly.
Not terribly. It's garlic. For garlic breath, kind of when that visitor had the everything, or the greeter has the everything bagel at Panera on the way in, right? Okay, very good. Thank you to our volunteers.
Round of applause for our
Yes.
volunteers. Excellent.
Go home and identify what your scratch and sniff sticker should be for your building or ask someone who's new.
Yeah. And I would say that's important. The smell test is a great, yeah, you can smell it, can't you? The smell test is a great thing to just ask a friend who doesn't go to your church, hey, will you come over to my building and walk around with me?
Yeah.
Because you just don't smell it anymore. And a lot of lobbies actually smell like bathrooms.
Yeah.
Um,
Or a YMCA or something.
You're the YMCA,
So,
yeah. All right.
Okay.
The best smell? Coffee's pretty good.
Coffee is good. Studies show that vanilla and cinnamon are, most people like those fragrances. So,
You know,
yeah.
I've not yet seen a church do this, but on I would buy a bread machine,
Oh, my word.
and I would
Yeah.
set that thing up on Saturday night to start about 4 in the morning, or whatever. Have it timed out so that fresh made bread is baking in your lobby.
Baking cookies.
Baking cookies. I
Oh,
mean, when we've sold a house. You know, an apple pie in the
Yeah.
stove will sell your house faster than not. So I would stick a bread. If you don't have a good solution for this, I'd put a bread machine in your lobby, behind the counter.
And everybody like, where's
You heard it here
bread?
first. It's going to sweep the nation. Churches.
Everybody has bread machines.
Craig
in their lobby.
Rochelle will be talking about the
Yeah.
bread machine.
Yes.
All right, where do we go next, Jamie?
All right, so next are our tips for, we talked about training our frontline volunteers. So, you know, for some of you, you may be on the front line, or you may be kind of leading a team of volunteers who are helping with your ushering, your greeting, they're working at the information center or the welcome center. And so I had the chance a couple of years ago to do a Disney Institute guest experience training. So fun. If you ever get the chance to do that, I would encourage you to do it. But they don't leave a whole lot to chance as far as their guest experience. In fact, I recently learned that, and you can watch this next time you go to one of the parks, they are not allowed to bend over and pick up trash. Like the people who are cleaning the park, they are supposed to use those the sticks with the grabby things. But still, they can't even pick up the trash like this. They are to do a swoosh motion to get the trash into the trash can. So I pictured kind of like Mary Poppins or something like, yeah. So they have been even specific to that point. So defining the behaviors you want to have, kind of like on our guest goals worksheet, defining the behaviors that you want to see for your volunteers, it helps you avoid those less desirable behaviors. So one of the things that we talk about is just, first of all, invite people into this role with intention. Like sometimes we have someone new in our church and we're thinking, oh, they want to serve. And I'm thinking, I want to get you a starting point to serve in. And boy, greeting, I mean, anyone can do that, right? Anyone can usher, and not necessarily. And so really make sure that you are matching people with your gifts. There's a place for everyone to serve in your church, but not everyone is designed for that role. And I think, you know, many churches can think of that they have one kind of greeter that it's like, oh, I don't know that I want him talking to people.
Jamie, can't a brick hold a door open?
Yes, true.
Right.
A bucket, yes.
Right.
it
We
would
want
be
more
fine.
than that.
Yes, we want more. Welcoming people into that. And so the other thing I would say is, and this is hard, identify people who should be in the role, identify people who should not be in the role. And some of them, the hard part is they're already there. We recently had a church come up and say, hey, we have this we have this greeter, and he is one of the charter members of our church, and he locks onto a newcomer. He gives them extensive building tours. He keeps taking them to the boiler room, and these people keep not coming back. And so they're like, what do we do? And I said, well, you know, it's probably time to have a conversation and invite him, like, hey, this is the guest experience that we're trying to go for. Maybe even let him see that in another volunteer. And they said, oh, that would really hurt his feelings. And so, and I've experienced firsthand when we want to be nice, right? As believers in Christ, we want to be nice and gracious to people. And yet, if you are losing visitors based on someone being in a role that they shouldn't be in, what is that newcomer missing out on? Are they missing out on part of their faith journey because we don't want to have a hard conversation with a volunteer?
Yeah.
So,
There's a standing item on our leadership team agenda every 2 weeks when we meet, and the question is, what isn't being said that should be? Consider putting that on your agenda, because this is a great way to say, you know what, the guy that's doing the donuts is probably not the guy that should be doing the donuts. He's just not friendly enough for that interaction. And the reason I'm picking on the donut
you have
guy,
an example.
one of our reviewers was visiting a church in Fort Wayne. She was She wasn't kind of pregnant, like, oh, I'm not sure. She was like super expecting any day. And this was probably her last trip for work before the baby was due. And she saw the donuts and she thought, hey, I'm eating for 2. How many donuts should she take? 2.
2.
She missed the small sign that said 1 donut, please. And the donut guy called her out. The donut Nazi, right. Hey, 1 donut. Not a great first impression. And when we called this out in the report, now, he's a faithful volunteer. He picks up the donuts every week. He makes sure the area is set up. But when we called this out, they were like, oh, yeah, we've known that for a long time. So what's not being said that should be? Put that on your agenda.
Yeah. The other thing is we talk about kind of what Disney trains on. They don't leave anything to chance. So they even train people how to smile. And especially because they have locations all over the world in different cultures, a smile might kind of look a little bit differently.
Hey, can you teach them that? I'm going to take a picture.
We are going to do smile training this morning. So, okay, you guys with me? All right, everyone, I can see all of you. So just so you know. Okay, we're going to do smile training, okay? So a smile is mouth open, teeth showing. So everybody show me. Mouth open, teeth showing, whether you like your teeth or not. Okay, good. I think they've got it. So yes, don't leave things to chance. If you need to train your volunteers how to smile, even Disney does that, so it's fine. The other part is, Evan, do you want to talk about being open for business? And I'm going to need a couple of volunteers here.
Yes.
While you're talking about that. I need 6 volunteers. And again, I'm not going to embarrass you. 6 volunteers up front.
How many?
6.
6. We need 6 volunteers.
I need
Just come on up.
Four
Don't even wait
people
for us to
here
call you
and
out.
2 people here. Yeah, 4 and 2.
Do you have a store or a place in either in your community or somewhere that you go that, you just can't quite tell if they're open or not? It's
All right.
like
For my
maybe the
4,
windows
come
are
over here.
smoked and they put a big open sign like a neon open. Like they want to make sure you know that you're open. Well, believe it or not, your lobby area, your welcome area
Right here.
needs a welcome
Okay.
or an open sign as
Okay,
well.
good. Right here.
And Jamie is
Now,
going to demonstrate
got my 2.
what the open
I
for
need-
business
I
sign
need
looks
one
like.
more.
All right, here we go.
Okay. And can I have you come over here with this group? Thank you for volunteering. Thank you for stepping up. We appreciate that. Okay, so for this group, what I would like you to do is huddle up in a little circle. Just kind of you're facing each other like you're all chatting. So we'll have you come around here. So I kind of want your backs to everyone. And I want you guys to just kind of talk and laugh like you're having the time of your life. Okay, so you're catching up with what you did over the week. Okay. For you 2 over here, I want you we just did smile training. Just face the crowd and smile. Look welcoming. Okay, so as we walk into churches, I would call this the holy huddle. We see this all the time. So we come in the front door, and I see these little clusters all over your narthex or lobby, whatever it is. And this is great because I love seeing that people are so happy to see each other. They haven't seen each other for a week. They're connecting. They're having a great time. But I don't feel like I could break in or ask a question as a newcomer. And so over here, I have these 2 ladies who are smiling. They look ready to receive me. They look like, hey, if I had a question, I would absolutely approach them. So making sure that if you have this in your lobby, this is not a bad thing, but making sure that your volunteers are trained. You have some smiling, welcoming people, like Evan said, who are looking for that person who's lost, who are looking for that person who looks alone or lonely, looks like they need someone to come alongside them, so that these folks can catch up and these folks can greet our visitors. Okay?
Hey,
Thank
Jamie,
you.
real quick,
Oh,
what,
yeah.
What happens though if I know these 2 and I come up and I'm like, let me see your
Good
names,
question.
Kim and turn around. Beth, Kim, how are you? How was your week this week? Oh, I had such a good time. Your birthday party was a blast. Blah, blah,
Because
blah.
this would never happen, right? At my home church, we have an information center that has a high counter, and for the longest time when you walk in on a Sunday morning, everybody's leaning up on it like it's a bar, and they're talking to the volunteers who are behind there because they're so excited to see them, right?
So what do they do when I come up and want to start a conversation?
Exactly. So here's Evan. He hasn't seen you for a week. He's excited to catch up, but you're kind of on duty. And so we encourage you to tell your volunteers, like, it is okay to tell a friend, oh, I'm so excited to see you, and I completely want to catch up. Can we do lunch later? Or I tell you what, our church is trying so hard right now to really focus on being welcoming to newcomers, and so I'm kind of on duty right now, but I want to catch up later. So can we get together? Can I meet you after the service? Something to kind of let them know we value visitors, and I'm on deck. I'm on duty with an important assignment right now. Okay?
Awesome.
Okay. Thank you, volunteers.
done. All right.
right. And then finally, we go ahead and advance. We talked about the other thing would be margin. So making sure that your volunteers, if I'm a newcomer and I come up to your information desk and I ask about where is the children's area, that ideally you're not pointing me to the children's area, but that there are enough people there that you have margin that Susan can go and walk me to the children's area, that it's okay for her to leave her post, that we're not pointing, but that we're actually taking people.
And the awesome thing is then you have time for a conversation.
Yes, along the way.
Yep.
So ideally she's well suited for that.
Yep. All right.
And then finally we talked about being welcoming, not desperate. So if this is the little visitor, you can see it, the little mouse here in the corner, and the cat is getting ready to pounce. We don't want to be that. And sometimes, especially if we feel like, oh, we've been trying so hard to get some new people in, we're so excited when they come and we want them to stay forever. And so we kind of pounce on them, and we don't want to do that. So ideally, and this may be kind of a shift in your thinking, but we would encourage you to demonstrate an interest in the faith journey of your guests. And could you advance that slide? Thank you.
Yep.
Demonstrate an interest in the faith journey of your guests more than an interest in getting them to your church. Show them you are genuinely interested in getting them where they need to be. If your church is a great fit, then awesome. Help them get plugged in. If it's not, that's okay, and we're still friends. Like, we want you to find a place that fits you.
We believe it's okay to say that to people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, boy, we are so glad you joined us today, and I hope you had a great experience, and if I can answer any questions, let me know. But whether it's our church or, another church in our community, we just hope that you find a home.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's hard because they're in your door.
Mm-hmm.
But what that says to you is I care more about you than I care about you being here.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes a long, long way.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
All
that
right.
brings us to the end. So
I think we have like 5 minutes.
Yeah, we have 5 minutes. We will make sure to get you where you need to go next. But are there questions, examples from your own church that you're just finding challenging or confusing? Again, we love to help people learn from one another. So, anyone? And Evan and I will hang
right
a
here.
few minutes as well.
It's easy for me to greet, and one of the things that you said was overzealous greeting.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you define what is overzealous?
Right.
Chase them. A lot of them come in the door, they don't even look at you, they just walk on by.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I would say tend to give people what they're giving you.
Mm-hmm.
So, even if they're walking by, morning. Those who want to respond will. Those who don't, morning. You've acknowledged them. That's good. Everyone wants to be acknowledged. I would say in the lobby, walking in, that's fine. If they give you more than that, then you meet them with that. So if they, well, good morning. All right, now we've got a conversation. So,
I would say think about how you feel when you walk in a store and a salesperson, hi, sometimes it is that just, hey, welcome to our store. Other times it's like, ooh, I want to make sure to sell you something
like,
today.
hey, guy at
So,
Sam's Club, I'm
yeah.
still not going to buy DirecTV.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yes,
Right?
over here.
How about the value of the worship team? For instance, I guess, at our church, I love our music, but one of the things that drives me crazy is I see some of the singers and there's no smile, or to me, that's one of those things that, I don't know, I just find to be a turn off.
Yep.
Does that factor into, this first time experience?
They are definitely a part of your front line, every bit as much as that pastor who's getting up and sharing a message.
Yep. And
So-
it's a delicate line because, ideally, I think about, and I was a worship leader in my church for 7 years. I envisioned my job was like driving a tour bus. I needed to I could enjoy the scenery, but I also had a responsibility to get everybody someplace. And so I would say that, talking with your worship team just about, or with your worship leader to talk with that team about expressiveness on the platform. This past weekend, I was at my in-laws' church in Springfield, Ohio, and the woman singing the song was talking about how passionate she was about her faith. The lyrics, it was joy. And it was the old line, like somebody should tell her face that she's singing about joy. So I think it's worth
worth conversation.
paying attention to.
Anything else?
Let me direct your attention to a couple things on your table. First
Yes.
off, this is just a little information about Fishhook. That'll give you a web address that you can find to trace this down. And then also, we are launching today something called the Small Church Hub. We have been really striving to figure out how do we re-engineer what we do for mid-size and larger churches to be able to help smaller churches improve. And so I'll be down in the lobby area today and tomorrow. If you want to come over and you can see the Small Church Hub, or you can just hop online and look at it. Lots of helpful free resources available to help you if you're a leader of a smaller church, make improvements on your own. All righty. Tom?
Oh, can you advance that slide? There's one more
Yep.
thing I almost forgot to mention.
Sorry.
Also, if you go to our website, fishhook.us/Wesleyan Conference, we have created just a page especially for you. And on there, you'll find a free resource. It's called DIY Secret Worship Guide. And so it's, I don't know, maybe a 5-page document. And it is a checklist that if you decide to either evaluate your own worship experience or have a friend come and help you, or even swap maybe with another church, it leads you through the steps of what to look at, specifically what to ask, and how to report those results back to your leadership. So make sure fishhook.us/Wesleyan Conference. And
I'll
that's
leave
free.
that up.
So.
Awesome.